You're not expecting what you will witness just now. This story is about getting fired, addiction, bombs, riots, murders, and becoming the best journalist of his times. Okay, it took me some time to prepare this video, because I was so excited to meet Ray, and I think that his story is so interesting that I was worried that I would not be able to show things in an interesting way. So, I hope you will enjoy this interview, because it is a true story and it is absolutely fascinating. Hello! Would you like to introduce yourself? Because people might know your texts, but not necessarily your face.
Fine, Paulina.
You can hold it if you want, yeah?
My name is Raymond Maitland Manna, more commonly known as Ray Manna. I'm a journalist for the past 62 years, and I've been working in the four courts of justice in Dublin, Ireland, for just over 30 years, reporting the High Court and the Circuit Civil Court.
So, what inspired you to become a journalist?
Well, I entered journalism at the age of 17, strictly by accident, because I went to a small weekly newspaper in Tyrone in Northern Ireland, close to where I was born, obviously, my local newspaper. And I heard they were looking for a reporter, and I went along, and I was told by the editor, a wonderful guy called Mr. Robert Park. He said, that job has been filled, someone else has got it. And he said to me, will you leave your qualifications with me for future reference? And I produced my qualifications, which were very good as regards English, typewriting, and shorthand. And when he saw them, he turned to another guy in the office and he said, Ivan, have you told that guy he's got the job? And this guy, Ivan, a very good friend of mine, said, now he's been a very good friend of mine for many years. He said, no, Mr. Park, I haven't told him yet. And the editor said, don't tell him. And he turned to me and said, you come with me. He brought me to the front office, and I started as a cub reporter in that newspaper, the Tyrone Constitution in Omagh, County Tyrone, the following Monday morning. That's how I entered journalism.
Yeah, this is like by a kind of good luck or a kind of accident, so to speak.
Probably accidentally being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And well, I worked there for 5 years and did all my training there. Trained in Belfast as well on a day release scheme. And after 5 years then I applied for a reporter's position in the Belfast Telegraph in Belfast, obviously, and that was a very good regional daily newspaper. And I joined there and left it after a year and started work with the BBC. And I freelanced with the BBC for 12 months, and then I joined the Belfast Newsletter. And from the Belfast Newsletter, I was covering a lot of the troubles in Northern Ireland for the BBC and for the Belfast Newsletter. And then I was headhunted by the Irish Independent in Dublin. They wanted me to come down here, so I came down to Dublin, and then they sent me back for 3 years to Belfast to cover the troubles. Mm-hmm. And I went back there and worked for the Irish Independent for 3 years there. Mm. And then before I came back to Dublin, and I was with the Irish Independent for 19 years before deciding to come down and work in the four courts of justice here.
So you said that you were headhunted by Irish Independent. So what do you think was the, what was what they liked and why you think that, they kind of, so to speak, hunted you?
Well, they were well aware of the work that I did for the BBC and for the Belfast newsletter in particular. It was all during the Troubles when news stories were literally ready-made for you. There were riots, there were shootings, there were murders, there were bombs, car bombs parked in the street, people blown to pieces. And that's the sort of story that I was writing about. It turned out apparently I was, however sad the story was, I was reporting them very well from a news point of view. And that's why they approached me and asked me to come to Dublin.
When you said that there were riots and a lot of trouble, a lot of dangerous things. So were you afraid, of your life that because you might not be in the right place, so to speak, and then just.
It was a dangerous job. Yeah, a lot of the work was done in darkness at night when you were reporting from various areas of Belfast and other parts of the country, but mainly Belfast, where riots and shootings took place. I had to be there. You just couldn't, like many other reporters, you couldn't sit in the office and make phone calls and ask the police and the army what's happening where and when and what are you doing about it. You had to actually be on the scene. On the scene. Now, with regard to the dangers and the fears, I have to admit that I was quite fond of alcohol at the time, and very often when I went into dangerous situations, I would have a half pint of whiskey in my hip pocket. And because
it was like this, that you were more a kind of like
you would take
brave.
Absolutely, you would take more risks and go into certain areas perhaps that you shouldn't be, but as a result of which I got many exclusive stories.
Yeah, in my case, I'm not so sure if I could drink when I would be doing the job, because I might not focus exactly.
Well, it was merely sort of medicinal from the point of view of giving one Dutch courage before they entered into the center of violence.
Yeah, exactly. And then to a kind of witness stuff like that. Like even sometimes when I watch when I see the photos taken by some reporters, and they are like first you would like to help, for example, this person or a child, but first the job, so they take the picture and then, for example, help. So I think that it's like I think it's horrible to see what is happening in the world, and then to be, because it's a little bit different, once you see something on television, because it doesn't necessarily a kind of concerns you, but once you're there, you see that, with your own eyes.
Well, it's particularly desperate what's happening in Ukraine, for instance, at the moment. So many people, men, women and children, as well as soldiers, dying literally, their homes being blown to smithereens. It wasn't as bad as that in Belfast, because there wasn't such an attack by a country as strong as Russia or by another country. It was by terrorists who hit and fled. They would lay a bomb, disappear, the bomb would go off, seriously damage, kill an awful lot of people on many occasions, and injure a lot of people. But it is very sad. One of the things I didn't tell you, although I mentioned the fact that I was quite fond of the alcohol, was that after a year with the Belfast Telegraph, they asked me to leave. They actually dismissed me because of having taken drink at a function that I was supposed to be reporting. And I was out of work for 2 weeks, and then the BBC hired me because they thought that I was very good, quite good. They hired me, and within 6 weeks of joining the BBC, I had one of the first world exclusive stories about murder in Belfast, and that was the Malvern Arms public house in Belfast, where two Catholic barmen visited it late at night, and they were in the wrong area. They were in a Protestant area, a loyalist area, and they were followed outside. One of them was shot dead and the other was injured. Now that night I was at a farewell party for a colleague of mine, and because I had stopped drinking after I had left the Belfast Telegraph, I was at this party and I was driving people home because I was sober, and this went on into the middle of the night. And I remember then leaving the car back with the guy who was leaving to go to New Zealand, and I walked down the road in Belfast to pick up a taxi, and it was quite close to where the then Reverend, he became Dr. Ian Paisley, was living at the time, and he had a police guard at his house. Now, while I was waiting for the taxi, I was playing a mouth organ, and the policeman came over to me and said, "Why are you raising such a noise at this time of the morning?" And we started talking, and my taxi came along, and the driver stopped, and I got in beside him on the front seat, and the policeman bent forward and he asked the taxi driver, "Where was that shooting?" And the taxi driver, it was in the Malvern Arms pub off the Shankill Road, and the policeman said, "Are there many dead?" And the taxi driver said, "There's one dead, but the police are following a blood trail and they're looking for a second man who may have been injured." And the taxi man then turned to me and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to the Malvern Arms." And I went, he drove me to the Malvern Arms, and I had a world exclusive at 6 a.m. on the BBC World Service the following morning.
Yeah.
And that was my beginning. After literally being sacked by the Belfast Telegraph, that was my beginning with the BBC.
Yeah.
A world exclusive. Good?
Yeah, very good. What did I learn? That things that happen in your life happen for a purpose. And as Ray said, all those bad things that happened in my life were for something good to come. It is so optimistic, isn't it? Just think about it. Is it the same in your life? Stay tuned, because it is only a part of the interview and there are more to come. Thank you for watching.